Good morning, Athens, and welcome to Education Matters, the official voice of youth. Education Matters is sponsored by your local internet station, MU Radio Athens. Check it out at muradioathens.com. My name is Samaya Stone, and joining me are my co-hosts,
McKenna Mincy,
Gerald Green,
and Kareem Lumpkin.
And today on Education Matters, we will be interviewing Miss Angela Mosley, who is over voters registration. But before we start today's show, we will have Kareem give us our words to go on.
The mind is everything. What you think you become. By Buddha.
Thank you, Kareem.
So let's just get right into it. Ms. Mosley, would you introduce yourself and your position to our audience? Just give them a rundown of what you do on your day-to-day and essentially why we're here talking to you about voter registration.
Okay, and first of all, I'd like to thank you all for having me. My name is Angela Mosley, and I currently serve as the Connection and Social Action Chairman of the Iota Psi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And part of our mission is to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to vote. And so today, what I wanted to remind everybody of, as this week, this Tuesday, September the 22nd, is National Voter Education Day, National Voter Registration Day. And with that, this week, we want to be sure that everybody makes that effort to get registered to vote and not wait to the last minute. October 11th is the last day that you will be able to register to vote in the general election. And you want to be sure that you have all your documentation ready to go to the polls on Election Day, which is Tuesday, November the 8th.
Awesome. So how long have you been in this position working with voter registration, and how have you seen voter registration kind of grow in importance to people and as a movement, I would say?
I've been involved in voter registration hands-on probably for the past 10 years. I worked diligently in DeKalb County for the past 8 years, and then coming back home to Athens, Clarke County, I knew that it was time to put my feet on the ground and do what I can to help get people motivated to register to vote, and to not only register to vote, but go to the polls and to cast their vote. Everybody has a right to vote, and that's eligible to vote, and they need to cast it.
So, Ms. Mosley, what ignited that passion in you to want to pursue a career in making sure people who are able to vote are registered? What was it that motivated you to pursue that career?
I'm just amazed by the election process. I am inspired by the work of John Lewis and Martin Luther King, who fought for us. You know, I grew up as a child in the 60s, and I watched a lot of things happen and why people fought for our rights that want to be taken away from us. And as a young adult, I could not wait until I turned 18 and I had that first opportunity to vote, because it was shown to me that that was something that should be cherished. It's your right as a citizen to do that. You know, that's just part of being an American. And if you want to make your voice heard, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But it cannot be because you did not exercise the right.
In the past few years, there has been this surge forward with more people wanting to register to vote, and a lot of causes, especially here in Georgia, trying to get more people registered to vote. And we have seen the benefits of that, especially in this last presidential election. And I know that you said that you have been working hands-on with this for the past 10 years. Have you been able to directly see that change? And if so, could you give us your perspective on it?
let's just go back to the biggest impact that I know that I saw was in 2008. And that's when we had the opportunity to see something that we thought in my generation that might not have ever been possible, to have a black president. So that inspired, and you have to think back that a lot of times people would think, well, your vote doesn't count, your vote doesn't matter, but just to be able to say that you had that opportunity then at that time, it was like wildfire. And people wanted to be able to say then at that time, you know, hey, I think I can make an impact. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but I did, you know, put my foot forward and try to make a difference. And it proved to work. It proved to work. Boots on the ground.
Awesome. Even with that, you mentioned 2008, and for some reason that completely went over my head as one of those great moments. It's probably because I was too young to experience it. But even then, do you think that we as a state, as a country, are kind of getting back to that point where we can make that change with voting?
I know, not only do I think, I know that we can, and we have to keep abreast of not listening to naysayers that say that your votes don't count, or even listening to the polls. You may have a preference for your potential candidate based on the issues, but you still need to exercise that right. I think, personally, I think sometimes people look at the polls and they say, oh, they say that this person's gonna win anyway, and so I don't need to exercise, you know, I'll let somebody else do it. I don't wanna stand in a line, and I don't have time. A lot of times people make excuses, but when you make excuses for not coming out to vote, then you cannot really voice an opinion on what the outcome is. So it's necessary. And I think now with the issues that are going on at hand, a lot of people are saying, you know what, even with a few votes make a difference. And not only we've got gubernatorial race, we have a U.S. Senate race, we have Attorney General, Commissioner of Agriculture, Commissioner of Insurance. These are the people that can increase or decrease, you know, bills that are coming into the House. You know, so those things are important, and you have to keep perspective of those people. Sometimes have a little bit more control of what happens in your day-to-day life than the people that have the higher seats. So it's at the local level that is most important, that we really need to be pushing out these votes.
Speaking of local voting, I wanted to highlight the fact that you said that you not only worked in voter registration in just Clarke County, you also mentioned that you worked in DeKalb County. Could you kind of share with us how those experiences were more similar or different?
Because of here in DeKalb County, the population makeup is just a little bit different, but the energy, I could feel there was a stronger energy in DeKalb, and maybe it may have been because of that time period when I was there, during the time when former President Obama was in office, and during his two election cycles. But one thing that I did notice on his re-election, it kind of, voter turnout kind of slowed down just a little bit, because I don't know if people thought that voted, well, okay, I don't have to worry about it. But you still have to go out and exercise your right to vote. In Clarke County, I am just becoming, reinitiating the vibe in Clarke County. So it's hard for me to really make a determination. All I know is that I want to make an impact here to be sure that I can get as many people that are eligible to vote, registered to vote, and get them to the polls. That's where it's going to count. We can register as many people as we want to, but if we don't get them to the polls to vote, it's all for naught.
Yes, ma'am. It's really interesting almost because, you know, the two counties that were able to turn Georgia blue, I believe, were DeKalb and Clarke County. So that's really interesting. I also wanted to just point that out as well to our viewers.
So, Ms. Mosley, with your experience here in Athens, trying to get people to register to vote, what are some of the exact details, like what are some of the things that you do in your day-to-day work to try to get people to register to vote? Like, do you go out to social events? Do you go to schools? Like, what are some of the things you do to try to get people who can vote to register to vote?
We have had voter registration opportunities at my local church. We have, I've also worked with the Economic Justice Coalition at the regional library, helping to register to vote. My chapter has created, we have dispersed right now over 1,000 cards with voter education information that lists the calendars of when you're supposed to vote, with QR codes to show people that they can go to the QR code and they can actually register from linking to the QR code. So, not only in Clarke County, but these cards have been distributed throughout Northeast Georgia. So, just trying to spread as much education throughout Northeast Georgia as possible.
Now, in the Athens area primarily, when it comes to people who are registering to vote, what age range would you say is most common in the people that go to register to vote? Do you see more younger voters, or do you see the more older, more aged voters that want to go to vote?
I have worked on the election as an election poll worker, and I have seen it's a variety. It's from the polling stations where I have worked. I have seen young and I have seen very old. So it's kind of hard to really gauge, what I see, who I see more of.
Okay.
In terms of getting people registered to vote, let me rephrase this. What age group, I'm kind of piggybacking off Gerald's question, what age group do you have the most trouble with getting them registered and getting them to the polls?
It's just a variety of people. Some people that we have approached to try to get to vote, they may say that, well, it doesn't matter. I've had a felony. I don't have a way. So it's a different variety of people from different age groups. I really couldn't pinpoint an age group, but I can say that those that we have gotten to register have been very enthusiastic about participating in the process.
That's awesome. And on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break and be back, picking right back up where we left off on this conversation. We'll see you after.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a great question. Oh, that's a good one.
Excellent question.
That's a great question.
You are listening to Education Matters, where great questions get asked and answered.
Welcome back to Education Matters. You are still here with McKenna Mincy,
Samaya Stone,
For Gerald Green.
And Kareem Wilson.
and we are still here with Miss Angela Mosley talking about voter registration and its ins and outs. But before we get back into our wonderful conversation with her, we are going to have our word of the week by Maya.
Thank you. The word of the week for this week is taciturn. Taciturn means silent or not in the mood to talk. It used in a sentence is, he was a taciturn man. He almost never initiates a conversation. And that has been your word of the week for this week.
Thank you, Maya.
So, Miss Mosley, can a felon, when they get out, can they vote or no?
Okay, from myvoterpage.com, it clearly states that you may not register to vote if you are currently serving a sentence for a felony. So me reading that indicates that if you have served your term for that felony, you should be able to vote. When you register to vote, they will check your record to be sure that you are in good standing. There's another reason that they list that you would not be eligible to vote is if you have been ruled mentally incompetent by a court. So if you have served your felony conviction and you're not currently, the law says on this website that you are eligible. Only if you are currently serving, you are not eligible. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Mosley. So we were talking, since you brought up the fact that even after felons get out of jail, they can vote. I also wanted to know, what are some of the requirements for voter registration?
To register to vote, you must be a citizen of the United States. You must be a legal resident of Georgia and of the county which you wish to vote. And you must be at least 17 and a half years of age to register. And you have to be 18 on the date of election day. So if you're 17 and a half now and your birthday falls after election day, unfortunately you would not be able to vote in the November 8th election, but you would be able to vote in the next election that will be coming in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ms. Mosley, I want to get your opinion on whether or not felons should or shouldn't vote because of the fact that, the system, the criminal justice system itself, put them in that position, and them voting they may not have a high opinion on that because they feel like that if they were to vote, that it might not matter because it wouldn't help them in any way. So I want to get your opinion on whether or not a convicted felon, not someone who is serving a sentence but has served their sentence, should vote.
As long as that person, and you ask for my opinion, but it clearly states what the requirements are to register to vote. And if that person is a citizen, that is your duty as a citizen to exercise your right. So, and it's a privilege, to be able to vote. There are some countries in the world where you don't have that right at all, period. So use it, But and also if that is that person's situation, they need, and not only that person, but each and every person needs to educate themselves in regards to the candidate and the issues. Know the issues. Know what's going to work for you. You may not want to go by party, but you want to go by the issues and how it affects you. What's going to be the outcome for me? So that is my opinion.
Okay, this next question, since you mentioned we were back on the felons topic and any people, because we were talking about how felons feel like after they've gotten out of jail they can't vote, people who just don't want to vote because they don't know anything about politics and things like that. Do you feel like that makes the process for voter registration difficult? Can that be a difficult, long, drawn out process because of the people that you run into sometimes?
It can be. But you know what? As a citizen, it's your responsibility to know what it is that you want. You're responsible you need to take it down another level and look at, especially locally. If you don't like what's going on in your community, then you start at that local level. You start with your commissioners. You have conversations with your commissioners. If the commissioner doesn't want to listen, then you go to your mayor. If the mayor doesn't want to listen, then you go to your state representative, your state senator, and you go on up the food chain. If you were at a job, if you were working a job and something wasn't right on your job, what would you do? You would report it to your supervisor, wouldn't you? I mean, I would. Or I would have a conversation with my coworker, and then, you know, talk it up. We talk about everything else we want to talk about, but, you know, talk is cheap. Do something. That is your right and your duty to actually be part of the process. It's easy to sit on the sidelines and be and criticize. It's easy. That's the easiest job in the world, is to criticize. But you know, you got to be part of the process. Then you have then that gives you that opportunity to say, hey. And if you voted for somebody and they didn't do what they promised to, that's on you to go back and contact them and say, hey, you said that you were going to do X, Y, Z. Stay in their face. You would stay in their face about other things. Mm-hmm. You know, if somebody did something that they promised to you, it's the same thing. It's the same way. And they do listen. They do listen. If they get a big enough audience, they'll listen.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. Do you feel like voting should be required? Like, even like voter registration, the early steps and all that, do you feel like since people should have that say and have that effect and that ability to help change their community, whether that's local, state, and things like that, do you feel like voting should be required, like you have to?
Well, you know, we live in the United States of America and we have all these freedoms. In a to be a voter, to me, I put it on the same way as driving a car. If you want to drive a car, you need to have a license, okay? And you need to you need to know what that license entails, and that's the privilege. So I feel the same way about voting. I love to drive. I love to drive. But I know that I have to do my homework to work out and vote for who's going to affect and carry out the issues that I have. I hope that parallel kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But no, you don't. To your initial question, that's everybody's right, but to do it or not. But it's in their best interest.
Now,
to follow through.
Now, Ms. Mosley, I want to get into voting inequities with you. Now, I know that you established in the first segment that you're a child of the 60s, so you've seen the struggle that we as a nation have had to go through to just get the right to vote for everybody. You know, you had literacy tests like how many jelly beans are in a jar or how many bubbles are in a bar of soap back in the day just to get people of our skin color, black, to vote. Now, those things are gone. You know, that surface level type of voter restriction is gone. But some people would say that it's translated into something more covert. You know, you have restrictions like if your grandmother were to try to vote but she couldn't make it there, you can't take her ballot there to go vote for her. She still has to go, or anything else like that. So I want to get your take on whether or not voting inequities still exist in today's world compared to when Dr. King was fighting for the right to vote.
Well, first of all, I was a little girl when all that stuff was happening, so I didn't experience it. My grandmother did. But yes, there's still inequities, and just as you mentioned that, you know, before when we had the ballot, the drop-off ballots, and they said it were for COVID, where you could do your absentee ballots in the drop boxes. The drop boxes have now been reduced to so many drop boxes per 100,000 voters, I believe, per county. So Clarke County only has one drop box, and you have to be responsible for, and that person has to be responsible for dropping off their own absentee ballot. So there are a lot of little nuances that they have put in place. Like you can't, the lines are long. You know, you can't give out water. But these are, to me, these are only things to deter people from going to the polls. You know, and it's just, to me, it's just like anything else. If there's something that you want, you go through the process. If grandmama can't get to the polls, well then grandmama has enough grandchildren or children. Baby, can you take me to the polls so I can go vote? Yeah, grandmama, I'm gonna take you. You know, if the lines are long, then you know what? Have some water in the car, and when you get done, drink your water when you come back to the car. They're little things out there they're distractions. To me, they're minor distractions to throw people off from exercising their right to vote. And there are workarounds for that. There are workarounds for that.
Thank you, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a great question. Oh, that's a good one.
Excellent question.
That's a great question.
You are listening to Education Matters, where great questions get asked and answered.
Welcome back to Education Matters. You're still here with Samaya Stone,
McKenna Mincy,
For Joe Green.
And Kareem Lumpkin.
and we are still interviewing Miss Angela Mosley about voter registration. But before we start our third segment, we will have our 2-year health by for Gerald Green.
Thank you, Samaya. Arms are among the most commonly broken bones, accounting for almost half of all adults' broken bones. The collarbone is the most commonly broken bone among children. This has been your 2-year health fact, sponsored by Drug Free Apples.
Interesting. So right before we went on break, we were talking about drop boxes and how that is a form of voting that appealed to many voters during the pandemic. It was kind of like one of the main ways how you got all that interaction. And there's only one drop box in Athens, which shocked me as you were talking, because I remember growing up, I was overwhelmed by the size of Athens, and it's such a small place in the grand scheme. And so I would just, 1, where is the drop box? And 2, is it realistic to think of all of the people that inhabit this tiny town to even reach that place?
Well, to answer your first question, there is one drop box, and it is at the Board of Elections that is downtown. That's at 155 East Washington Street. You have to go inside to place your absentee ballot. The office is open, I believe, from 8 a.m. to 5. And the justification for that is because the ballots have to be secured. During COVID, they had as many as, it escapes me now, I think we had about 8 drop boxes that were located throughout the county, and they were convenient. You could drop your absentee ballot in there. The ballots were, I thought they were secured. They were picked up routinely on a several day basis and brought to the Board of Elections to be held on for final count. On the day of election, the drop box, this was pre-COVID, during COVID, absentee ballots were picked up multiple times during election day and brought into the Board of Elections for final count. On election day, there will be no drop boxes. There will be no drop boxes. The drop box will be closed. It will not be available to the voters on election day. So you can always mail it in. The drop boxes make it convenient. I've asked the question of how much postage is required to mail in your absentee ballot, and I've been told by the Board of Election one forever stamp will get it there. I'm not sure about the weight, but that was what I was told, that one stamp should get it should get it to the Board of Elections.
Now, given the difficulty in how you described how we only have one drop box here in Athens, with how many people and how many sides of Athens there are, not this year, but in the next coming years, could you see that? Could you see this being a growing issue in terms of the availability to vote for everybody here in Athens? And if so, would you consider taking this up to the I suppose like the county government or like any county officials to make some changes to this circumstance?
I believe the The latest bill, SB 202, was what mandated, that's at the state level, so it would not be for the county. What may increase additional drop boxes is if we have more than 100,000 registered voters. That might secure the county getting an additional drop box. Right now, I do not know how many registered voters are in Clarke County, and you also think about this, Clarke County also includes the city of Winterville.
Yep.
So the people that live in Winterville have to make that trek to the Board of Elections of Clarke County to drop off their absentee ballots.
That is wild.
I've just been over here in disbelief hearing everything because I know what it's like downtown on Washington Street from 8 to 5. There is no point in time where it's not going to be extremely difficult, whether you're in a car, if you are using public transport, a bike, maybe. It's just...
And you're bringing them in one by one. So it's not like you can bring somebody else's, oh, I'm going downtown, I'll drop yours off. No, you have to drop off your own individual absentee ballot.
Do they let them in one by one? So it's like one person, drop your ballot. Next person, drop your ballot. I hate that.
Well, I know that's what the law says.
Oh my goodness.
So you cannot, if they're there verifying, they're not asking for ID when you drop your ballot off, but you can't come in with multiple ballots to drop off. It's, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to let it sit for a moment.
It's a lot.
It is a lot to take in. I know that just hearing this now and thinking about how we've had so many issues in Georgia with voter suppression is just really shocking, and it's starting to kind of make me realize as I'm approaching voting age why we have so many organizations that are really working and putting in that time to not only get these laws changed by getting more people to vote, of course, but why voter registration and making sure that this information goes out is important, because even sitting and listening into this show, I'm 17 and a half at the moment. My birthday is coming up, so me and my friends are all planning when we're going to go register. It's very exciting, but I can't help but feel a little discouraged about it. And I can see how especially older voters would develop that voter apathy. And coming from you, I don't ever want to get to that place where I am feeling so discouraged by the process that I just kind of wash my hands of it. So what is something that you do in your position to combat voter apathy in the people that you're helping, and even with people who work with you in voter registration? Because I can imagine with some of the things that you see and interact with, it can be really easy to get discouraged.
A lot of times we're talking to people, you don't so much encourage or have to talk about the vote. Focus on the issues that directly impact them. We have so many problems here in the city of Athens. You have people that are having housing issues. Recently there were some people that have been just displaced because their rent has been doubled and they have no place to go. Those issues can be combated if people have the opportunity to vote. You have issues with, I'll just say, traffic issues. You have issues with your property tax. You may have issues with, say for instance, like the Public Service Commission that I mentioned, with your electric bill, your water services. Those things directly impact you on a day-to-day basis. And people do not sometimes really connect the dots and see how their vote has an impact on changing and restructuring things that help them on a local basis. Even with your judges, you need to know who your judges are. You need to know who your district attorney is. Should you ever have any type of legal problem, who's going to be your best advocate? Who's going to help you in those times of trouble? You never know when something could happen to you, and you're going to need the laws to help you. So we have to be our own advocate. But the best way to address that is to really focus in on the issues. Another big one is abortion and right to life. They're two very strong issues, and people, have their views on that. But those things make a difference. You need to know who stands for what and how you feel if you want your issue to come to fruition or be resolved.
Now, another issue, well, not issue, but sort of a roadblock or hurdle or whatever you call it, that some voters or all voters may go through is like on the national level, you'll have figures like Donald Trump, who will like spout out rhetoric saying that an election was rigged or that there was voter fraud or anything like that. Now, I want to get your take on how that statements like that can affect a voter's thought process going into the booth, and how that just how much of an effect that can have on someone's ability to vote.
Well, for me personally, if you hear something over and over and over again, you tend to believe what you hear. But it's your own personal responsibility to verify the truth and verify the lie. It's easy to listen and to hear, but you're responsible as be an educated voter. Don't just go to the poll and say, okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I don't know about this person or that person. I like their name. There was once a time, if you looked at the ballot, that they strategically, but there are a lot of candidates, they strategically put people in a certain way, but now this alphabetized. But so people would get tired of looking at all the list of candidates and say, oh, I'll just pick the first one, And I could say back in the day, as a young voter, that was something that I know that I did, especially with some of the local elections, because I wasn't paying attention. But now that I know better, when you know better, you do better. So I hope I answered your question.
Well, thank you. That certainly did, and we'll be right back with more questions and answers like that after these messages.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a great question. Oh, that's a good one.
Excellent question.
That's a great question.
You are listening to Education Matters, where great questions get asked and answered.
Welcome back to Education Matters, the official voice of the youth. My name is Pedro Green, and joining me are my co-hosts,
McKenna Mincy.
Samaya Stone.
And Clarke County.
Now, Miss Mosley, I gotta ask, since this year is an election year, you've got the Senate going around, the Senate election happening. We had the county commissioner election and the mayor election here in Athens just passed through. How busy has it been for you, and what is it like on any other year when it's not an election year for you? What is business like for you?
People are relatively in the off years. They really aren't looking at the issues and thinking so much about the voting or the voting process. But it is important to stay in tune. That's the time when you do your groundwork and follow up on your candidates to see if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. The promises they made, the promises that and let them know that you thank them for the promises that they kept, and keep a pulse on them. There are always going to be, usually on the off years, there may be special elections for people that may be vacating office, especially on a local level, that you need to kind of keep abreast of, and you have to kind of keep educating the community to let them know, and reach out to those candidates, have questions for them. A lot of times you have to, many times there have been, like during the mayoral election here in Athens, that they had the question and answer series, and I got a chance to attend some of those. Those same type of elections can go on in the off years, so you need to be tuned in to hear what those candidates are saying and what they're doing. Focus in on the off years on your local elections, because that's where the real work happens.
What are some of the places that prospective voters can go to get this information? I know some people will always say, well, I didn't know where to find this. I didn't know this was happening. So what are those resources?
You can always tell people to go to myvoterpage.gov to get the most current information. But on the county level, you can go to Clarke County Board of Elections and frequent that site and see what's happening. There is Economic Justice Coalition is working tirelessly to get information out to the community about what's happening. And then all you have to do everybody is pretty much computer savvy and on the phone, go to your local Facebook page and just Google, and you can Google anything. Google is my hero. To find out what's going on and just stay in tune that way. There are several organizations. As I stated, I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated here in Athens, and there are other fraternal organizations within the community that are also working to help educate voters. So they're out. The information is out there, but just like anything else, you have got to want to do the work. We have to do the work.
What are the requirements to register to vote? What are some of the offices in politics that people can vote for?
Okay, to register to vote, you need to be a citizen of the United States, a legal resident of your county in Georgia that you wish to vote, and you need to be 17 and a half years of age. When you complete out your voter registration information, you're going to need to supply an ID information, which can be your driver's license. And if you're doing a standard form, if you don't have a driver's license, you're going to need to provide at least the last 4 digits of your social security number. Once you should receive if everything falls through the Board of Elections, you should receive a voter registration card. And your first time that you vote, you will be required to show an ID verifying that you are who you are. And you will have to show that every time that you vote. And you can use your driver's license, a state ID. If you do not have, you can get a free election ID at your Board of Elections. And they will need to have verification of your address which can be, there are several items that you can use. You contact your Board of Elections office to find out what's required to get a state ID at no cost to use that to vote. Your second question was what other are the offices that are up for that we'll be voting for in November? Well, we will be voting for governor. We will be voting for lieutenant governor. We will be voting for Secretary of State. We will be voting for a state senator, a state representative, commissioner of agriculture, commissioner of insurance. We'll be electing a state school superintendent and attorney general, a commissioner of labor, and there are 2 commissioners of public service. We also have a federal position that we will be voting for, and that is for U.S. Senate. Those are the positions that we will be voting for in the November general election.
Now, to tip off the show for us today, to end the show today, I gotta ask you the essential question. And Ms. Mosley, the question is, why does education matter to you?
Education matters for so many reasons. We'll be lost without it. If you don't know your past, you won't know your future. And the only way to do that is to educate yourself.
So, I know that usually we end with the essential question, but we got a little more time, and there is a question that I want to ask you because you work so close with voter registration. What are some of your predictions in terms of voter turnout and just what voting is going to look like for us in this upcoming general election?
I would love to predict that it's going to be a higher than expected turnout. I don't like the polls, but I think that, because polls can be wrong, but I think that with the issues that are at hand, there's a lot at stake that's being put on the table, and I think some candidates are thinking that some are going to show up and some won't. I think they may think there's going to be apathy, but all I know is that I'm going to do everything that I can to try to ensure that I get as many people encouraged to go to the polls on November 8th and during advanced voting, which starts on October 17th through October the 4th. November the 4th.
All right. Everyone listening, make sure that you look out for those dates and be sure to look out for these nice pink flyers. They give you a lot of great information. I have one myself that I will be showing to my friends at my high school as we are preparing to go into our own journey with voting, and definitely encouraging voter registration. And with that, we will see you guys next week.
And happy early National Voters Registration Day.